Okay. Okay, according to this I am live, but it doesn't seem to be broadcasting my picture. Bear with me 1 second, guys. Okay, that should have resolved the technical issue. We apologise for that. Today, again, we are going in on our Space Marines, our Angels of Death from our Kill Team starter set, adding some detail. Put the camera a little bit closer, so hopefully it'll be a little bit easier to see some detail. Already gone ahead and pre-mixed our blues from yesterday. So our Cantor, so our Rust Grey, and our Cantor Blue. Using a small brush, go in and start adding some highlights to certain areas. How are you, Summit, anyway? Obviously, depending on size, obviously when they're this small, we're doing details like highlights being this close, obviously a lot easier. But we're glad to hear that it's working well. Same thing as yesterday, I'm just kind of taking the highlight where light would naturally hit, and this is the same two colours I just mentioned, really watered down. So far I've just applied it to the top of his helmet and to the corner here of his jump pack. I'm going to do the same on the other one. Obviously in this case we've got a slightly different weapon to use today. We have one of the blades, which is the chain blades, so we've got that and a gun to use today. So few more things to add details to, unlike all of our guys with guns from yesterday. Just getting yourself ready for work, Summit. So anyone was so quiet, remembering I had to start my music. Apologies for that. Oh dear. That doesn't sound good. Are they messing you around? Oh, great fun. I don't know why their response is just to make you do it alone instead of giving you somebody else. Just applying that same blue to like the tops of the kneecap armor. It adds some very subtle hint of colour there, which I actually really like. There we go. Yeah, this camera angle is definitely way better for close-up shots. Doing on those knuckles as well. What I'm doing now is just mixing up just the Cantor blue on its own, kind of help with any blending on the shoulders and stuff like that. I just applied a very thin layer of that over the blue that I did on that shoulder, which went quite heavy in with that highlight shade, and a very watered down Cantor blue over the top, and it's just made the top part of that shoulder stand out a little bit. But once this is dried down, I'll add a tiny bit of the mixed colour on top again. Just building it up in subtle layers. Just barely touching his toes of his boots there, a little bit with that blue as well. Whilst that dries, move on to the next colour, which I'm going to do gold next, which I'm going to be using Auric Armour Gold for that one again. Have you ordered any more stuff for Warhammer yet, or seen anything yet, Summit? Just taking this across the teeth of the blade. And across the pommel. Or the handle, whatever you want to call it. And across some of just the smaller details that are on the blade. Can't forget the other side. Don't want to neglect half the teeth. There we go. Even though that's not going to be seen, I know it's not. I know it's there, so I need to highlight it. Just for my own sake. This one, as you can see, has got some gold on his shoulder panels, so I'm going to highlight the raised edge of his shoulder panels as well. Been debating as well as doing some scenery, like almost some like tutorial style stuff for streams, where I do certain landscapes. I know you and I were talking about it yesterday, that some of the scenery that people make is insane. I was thinking of doing something like that, so either a sandy kind of scenery or a beach scenery, some lava scenery, anything like that. Because even though we've got tutorials on our channel, sometimes it's nice to see them in real time. Sip of tea. Also gives me a chance to experiment, because I've only done mostly snow and lava so far, and then this kind of muddy base, so it'd be nice to do something different. Okie dokie. It's got some gold tags on him, so I'm going to just highlight those as well. You can see it just hidden just behind his sword here. And I'm just selecting like certain beads wrapped around his wrist, like kind of like a rosary. So I'm just selecting certain dots and bring them out. So not certain what to get at the moment. You have options. Too many, some would say. Which is of course the problem. Order something soon. I mean, like I said, you know you love Skaven, so if you were to get the Age of Sigmar starter set, you wouldn't regret it because you do have your Skaven in there. That's just what I would recommend. Because then you get all the helpful tips that come with the manuals. Written and prepared for beginners. Yeah. Mr. Ned's got a very good point there. I actually haven't looked to see if there's a Skaven one. There's got to be, or something similar. Been too focused on my trees and my ghosts for my Warcry to even look at any other races. I'm just going to move on to his blaster here. No Skaven pre-made sets, so you'd have to buy some Skaven Elfhound, so might be best with something else. Obviously, the figures are really, really simplistic, but they're not tiny either. Going in with White Scar and Abaddon Black, mix the two together to create quite a dark grey, which I'm going to use just to highlight certain parts of the gun. You can just see at the very tip of his gun there, I've added some grey. I've also added to a couple of the buttons and other small sections there. Add to there's a little button on the top there, maybe a trigger or some description. I'm going to put that on there as well. Aside from Skaven Summit, in Age of Sigmar in particular, so the fantasy side, is there anything else you've been looking at and thinking, oh, that looks interesting? gonna just pot out some Stormhost Silver to do the highlights on his blaster. Making sure there's no excess water in my brush. So far I've been using the exact same small brush for all of these. As you can see, like, it's a little bit blurry there. There, like the brush bristles on this there aren't very many, they're very thin, but that's exactly what I need for highlighting. This is number 3 of the set that is in our description. Just going with the lightest hand, because I don't want to risk flooding this and taking away all that lead belch I applied before. But I also want to make sure this is visible. They do have wood elves in the fantasy world, like the wood elves are now the Sylvaneth. And I do believe there is a Warcry set for Sylvaneth. But what I've actually been working on, the last time Mr. Ned and I went into the last time Mr. Ned and I went into a store, we actually made 2 armies. One is for my Nighthaunt, which is my Ghosty Boys, and then one is for my Sylvaneth. Once I've done these, I'll be moving on to painting those figures, actually. So if you want to see how they look, and if that might pique your interest as well, I'm happy to do that tomorrow, because my plan is to finish all 4 of these figures tonight. I think it's pick up the tools, paint set, and see what I can paint with that. Yeah, it's not a bad way of going about it, to be honest. There we go. Decided to go with a slightly different brown this time for highlighting my satchels. Just think the other one was a little bit too pinky toned. So in this case I've gone for Blood Reaver Flesh instead of Night Quester Flesh. It's just a slightly more muddy brown rather than a pinky brown. Yeah, the Sylvaneth look cool. That's what I've got. That's my cherry blossom theme. I've got those, and I have for a box set, I had a Sylvaneth Warcry, which I painted to like poison dart frogs, which are really, really cool as well. But I'm trying to decide how I want this next set to look. I haven't decided yet. I'm just taking that brown that I just mentioned and just dragging it across, like, I've got the tiniest amount on this brush, and using the side of it, I'm just dragging it down the edge of the satchel. You have to check it against the website as well, just kind of see what else they've got in regards to that image. Because the Sylvaneth are really, really cool. There's lots of earthy looking ones, which I'm a big fan of. Yeah, Warcry is really, really fun to learn. I think the general span of a game is like maximum of like half an hour. Depends on how you play it. So Warcry so obviously today we're painting Kill Team, which is the 7 figures. Warcry is the fantasy version of what I'm doing now. And it's actually what we learned first, because we're still learning Kill Team. This is from the starter set. We've done a couple of the scenarios from the Kill Team book, and we're still working our way through it. Yeah, so the Sylvaneth Warcry is the twist wield, which is the exact models I have. And they are, I can confirm, they are really, really fun to play. Really fun to play. And also really fun to paint. Yeah, they look really, really good. It's a smaller base as well, so even like financially as well. Like, obviously, not necessarily that financially is the issue, but £40, because it's £40 for the Warcry Twist Wield set on its own. And you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 figures in that set. As well as ability cards, fighter cards, obviously all to kind of help you play the game. But even just appearance-wise, if you would literally, like you said, you're just interested in them for painting or whatever, they just look really, really cool, especially from the Warcry. There's like the main lady in the Warcry has like a beehive on her head, so she just looks really angry, and that's great fun. Don't want to mess with the angry bee lady. Right, now that gold's dry, the same one I just used before, I'm just going to go back over those teeth with that gold again, just to bring them out even more. The Mind Stealer Sphinx, yes, I've seen that. I've seen it a few times. It does look really good. I do want it, but at the same time, I'm trying to work on with what I have. Can see on camera now those teeth are just a little bit brighter in comparison to the rest of the body. Also, like, adjusted the lighting so it's less white light and more natural light. I don't know if you prefer that or not. Thank you very much. So I just actually went ahead and grabbed me my Warcry Sylvaneth one so I can show you what they look like. This is in like a poison dart frog theme. So it's quite dark and then bright colours. Let's move him out of the way for a second. So this is the bee lady I was talking about. These were the ones I used on my Armies on Parade board. The one that won us a bronze. So yeah, they're pretty cool. I do like the Viney Boy though, he is very, very fun. But I will say these individual orange dots took me forever to do, but they are so worth it. Little Dryad, who I decided to give some claws to, some nails, give him a little manicure. But again, like, these look really, really detailed. And although they were so simplistic to paint in regards to it's a base colour of a brown and then dry brushing to kind of pick out all these details. And then I use a technical paint which basically makes things glow to cover the body. These are like my emo Warcry. They're my emo warband. So I've got my sweet, lovely, innocent cherry blossoms, and then I have my emo ones for my Warcry. So yeah, like, if I mean, I'm biased, but I would recommend Sylvaneth just because they are really, really cool. If you do like your wood elves. On his back, just hidden underneath his satchel, he has a tiny little red bomb here. So same thing as yesterday, I'm going to use some orange to add the highlight to that, some Troll Slayer orange. Yeah, when I do the Sylvaneth stuff, I will be dry brushing a lot. So if you want to see how that technique looks like as you're actually doing it, then you can have a look at those. Just touching the very bottom, the visible part, or the most visible part of this little bomb here, or a grenade. Not entirely sure what it is. It's a weapon of some description. And just touching what's visible there. And I think on the back of his heels, I'm going to go back in with some of that blue we had earlier, just to highlight that. Because granted, these figures are quite dark. This blue is just... it's just subtle enough that, especially in pictures in person, it shows up quite nicely. Without being too distinct from the original colour. Okay. Now using that silver again. This guy has a few shell casings on his base, so I'm just going to pick those out for now, and some barbed wire. And whilst those details dry, I'll move on to the next figure. You can just kind of see on the base, it just kind of breaks up that brown. And adds a nice little subtle touch of detail. I really enjoy doing the shell casings, actually. Fingers crossed. If not, it would just be a case of trying to hopefully wait. But obviously, if once you've been at work all night, the last thing you want is to be waiting around for ages. So I'm actually going to repaint the stones. And for that, I'm going to use Rakarth Flesh, which is like a nudie, creamy colour. Wouldn't quite call it a flesh colour, but it's Rakarth Flesh, that's why. And after that, once that is dry, I'll go over it with the shade paint. But whilst it's dry, I'll move on to the next figure. Yeah, fingers crossed by the weekend you can find something you're interested in, Summit, and just spend your weekend building and painting. Only negative is you might now get the bug for it, and you might then want to immediately start buying more. Which some might see that as a negative, some might see it as a positive. The only thing I will say, Summit, is if you do end up looking into the Warcry stuff, you won't find that in store anymore. That is now only online. A few months back, we went to the actual Warhammer world that morning and there was loads of stuff. We decided during the day we were going to get into Warcry. We came back and it was all gone off the shelves in the space of literally about 2 or 3 hours. So we ended up having to order everything online or go to a shop called Element Games, which also has an online store. There we go. That's the stones all painted with a base of Rakarth flesh. And whilst that dries, move on to the next figure, which I think is going to be this guy. He looks pretty cool. The perk of these all being exactly the same colour scheme as well is that I am using the exact same shades for all of them to do highlights, which makes my job a lot easier. I do love on this, like, each one has their own, like, individual little thing about them that makes them unique. And this is kind of got this little codexy type thing on his arm, which is really, really fun. Yeah, every couple of days, like, so now that we've introduced Warcry, you have a couple of days, something to kind of have a look at those and see what else piques your interest. But of course, there are loads of options on there. There's absolutely loads to choose from. Sometimes that's the problem, because there is too much to choose from. Sorry about that, I'm just muting myself to blow my nose. Yeah. Let's go pick out some silver. Yeah, just gonna use some storm host again. He has in his hand some ammo. Just going to paint over the ammo, and then I'm going to move on to his weapon. To add a little bit more colour, so at the moment the silver I'm using is a little bit watered down and I want it to be a little bit more pigmented, so I'm just adding a drop or two more colour. Do you have any of the Total Warlords as minis, Rothmer? I do really enjoy highlighting the silver, especially after I've gone over it already with a shade. It just brings it out so much nicer, it makes it look so much cleaner. And I'm going to go in with that grey I mixed before and do the rest of the gun. This one has like a lot more attachments on it, so there's a lot more detail I can pick out in comparison to the last blaster. Okay, so Rothmer's just gone ahead and grabbed some legendary lords that they've got. The other ones they have. So we have... Oh, kind of hard to see her. Just adjust the camera up a little bit. Just a little bit. So you've got Drycha, which again is a Sylvaneth one, or a Wood Elf. You then have just the camera up a bit more. You then have Durthu. And this is the big one who I haven't painted yet. This is my Grey Shame. But Alarielle on her big old beetle. This is the figure that scares me. This is the one I want to do, / need to do, but due to her sheer size, terrifies me. Yeah. It's basically... I'm not really a surprise that all the ones here are, of course, Sylvaneth. So you have Alarielle. Alarielle, the Everqueen. Hello, Ballistic. How are you doing? Yeah, they are some big and expensive models. I got Durthu with my Sylvaneth Spearhead, very luckily. Then Drycha was separate. Drycha's £40, so she's not that expensive in the grand scheme in comparison to a lot of other ones. But at the same time, you could buy a Warcry for the same price of just... Yes, Alarielle, we literally went into Warhammer on Valentine's Day, and Rothmer was dead silent, walked over, just grabbed Alarielle off the shelf and bought her for me. And Alarielle is, ooh. You've piqued Rothmer's attention. Yeah, Alarielle the Everqueen is £105. She is an expensive model. But with Alarielle, there's a few techniques that could be interesting for her. But because they're still untested by me, I'm also a little bit worried to try them. I don't know, are there any Dark Elf Lords? Okay. I'm gonna go in with some Blood River Flesh. I'm going to use that to go over the satchels and his gun holster as well on his hip. Literally just picking out edges and corners. Just to add the tiniest bit of dimension to these. Yeah, as you can see, Ballistic, we are highlighting under your suggestion. So just make them look a little bit better. Tiniest bit of colour. Yeah, Iduneth Deepkin. They are very cool though. Very, very cool. So even though they're the Dark Elves, now they're kind of just Sea Elves. Right. So just doing a little song change. Gonna go with the gold now. So Auric Armor Gold. They look cool though, that's the only thing. Just highlighting edges. And I've also just highlighted the center wings on his chest armor. And then a little bit just on the little codexy thing he has on his arm. Just going back in with that blue grey mix I mixed earlier, which is Rust Grey and Cantor Blue again, and just highlighting some of the back parts of the figure now. a few highlights on her back, just to bring her out a little bit more. On her back, his back. Sort of daughters of Cain. And maybe let's go her. Right. Going back to the figure I was just on, I'm just going to paint the base of this now, whilst that other one dries. I'm going to go with a slightly bigger brush, and I'm going to go in with Agrax Earthshade over those. It just dashes up the stones a little bit. It makes it more like stones rather than just skull-covered plates on the floor. Going in with some silver. It's just got some, same as before with the other guy. He has some spent armor, some spent ammo, sorry, not armor, on the floor, as well as some spent bullets. So I'm just picking those out with the silver. What's longevity like on the paints? I assume they can dry out of the pots eventually. Some of the paints we've had for a year. So, and they're still holding up pretty good. The biggest and most important part is just making sure every time you finish painting that you seal the lids down properly. Because if that's left open and air is getting in, then of course they are going to dry out a lot quicker. You read that as plants. So I didn't realize we were doing a plant video. No, with the paints they are pretty good, just because they are pretty airtight. If the edge of the paint pot just gets a little bit too filled with paint, just make sure you clean that out so you can actually get a good seal on them again, so that they shut properly. Okay, so what I have in front of me here is a different brand. This is Miniature Paints, and these paints are about 20 to 30 years old, and they still work. If you want to add some like water or some oil to them, depending on the format, these still work. I've used them in past projects. These were gifted to me by my father, who did Warhammer when I was a kid, and apparently I'm carrying it on. So he gave me all of his old paints, and even after that time, they still work. So it's just all about how you take care of them, really. But again, like we talk about other brands, like see we have Citadel, we have Miniature Paints, and there's another one which is quite good, which is quite reputable for Warhammer, called Vallejo. We've got a few of those paints, they've got 3. But personally, we just majority use Citadel. This guy doesn't really have any like additional things on his belt or anything like that, so I'm just going to go in with that Radcalf flesh now and just paint the stones. So once again, this is Radcalf flesh I'm using to do these stones. Remember the last time on yesterday's stream, I just went over these with some Sterland Mud technical paint, just to kind of make the bases a little bit more gritty. And unfortunately when I did that, I also painted over the stones a little bit, so I'm just kind of going back through and bringing those back out again. Yeah, in regards to paints, like, we've had more run out than we've had dry out. Every single one that's dried out has been entirely our fault. So we are only an hour in and we've done 2 of our 4 already. Obviously some of these are a little bit less complicated than the ones I did yesterday, but I've still got a couple of slightly more complicated ones to do, so I thought I'd leave those for last, give them a bit more time. So I've probably got about another hour, 50 minutes to an hour, about 2.5 hour stream in total today, so I've got a bit more time to focus on these. There we go. Those stones have been painted. The spent ammo has been painted. Now we're just going to leave that to dry. Whilst it does, we'll move on to our next figure. So I'm either going to paint this guy next or this guy. I think I'll go for the guy with the cape. My sniper. to make a different colour. For this, I'm going to mix the same colours I mixed yesterday, which is Galvorback Red and Pink Horror together for my highlight. This kind of, when mixed together, these two colours make like a dusty pinky purple colour. So, starting on his cape. Cape, poncho, whatever you want to call this. And I'm just going to run it along edges mostly. Edges and natural creases. Ballistic, you mentioned that you were raiding in WoW. Are you doing any particular raid tonight? Turning his face. It's the only one I've got that's actually got a face as well. And his face is a little bit creepy. I'm not going to lie. Creeps me out just a tiny bit. Making sure I'm cleaning off my brushes in between each colour transition. And mixing now just the exact same two colours, that same Pink Horror and Galvorback Red, just making it ever so slightly lighter. So I've just applied that blue to the kneecaps, the elbows, the fingers, back of the hand, and the jump pack. There we go. Right, I'm going to go with the gold next, which is again Auric Armor Gold. And just highlight certain details. Like he has these little clasps that are all gold, so I'm just highlighting some of those as well. Just make sure they're not lost. And now for the silver. Clicking on the barrel and on the scope and on the tops of the handle. From where like light would naturally fall for those highlights specifically. And then across just little details just to make sure they're not lost, like all the buttons. Tiny skull there. There we go. And whilst I'm on the silver, we're going to paint the pieces that are on the floor again. As this is a sniper, he's got a few more shell casings. Quite a few more actually. comparison to the last couple of figures. And then there's just got a few pieces of barbed wire. Which I think is actually quite a nice touch. Brings us out a little bit more. There we go, whilst the silver dries, we'll do the Rakarth flesh on this guy. Not the Rakarth flesh, the Agrax Earth Shade. The shade on these stones. To get them going with a slightly bigger brush to do. There we are. And now just pick out those other stones using Rakarth flesh again, and then we are down to our last figure, which is another big gun boy. And his base has a lot of shell casings. It's going to be interesting to make sure I've picked every single one of those out. Obviously, I know Summit, you have work, and I know Ballistic, you're doing a raid. Has anybody else who's watching got any other plans for this evening? In fact, using this Rakarth flesh whilst it's out, just going to go over the underside of the cape. OSRS sailing update. It's got to be taken very seriously. Has to be. If nobody else knows this, I know Mr. Nad knows this about the Guild Wars 1 update that's coming out, which I know he's very excited about. There we go. And that is him. I'll pop him to one side. And then, like I said, whilst his base dries, we'll move on to our fourth and final figure of the night, which is number 7 in the complete collection. Tomorrow we're moving on to some Sylvaneth, so if that kind of... I know you're not really into your fantasy stuff, Ballistic, but if you do want to see some being painted from start to finish, because these are a whole new set that I'm painting, new Warcry army. So once this is over tonight, I'll be doing some research, I think, on themes. Thank you. So with the highlighting, it is literally, again, just about highlighting mostly the highest points of the figure, so where the light's going to hit. And this one has quite a prominent lip here on his armor, so I'm making sure to just hit the edge of that with this. And through the jump pack. There we go. Just giving the back of this guy some much needed attention. Today's stream, obviously, you can see we've gone for a closer camera angle but I've also adjusted the light to be more natural light than white light. There we go. Just like with the last guy, I'm focusing on his elbows, hand, back of his hand, and his fingers. Some interesting choices of music on this soundtrack today. Anybody else got any more plans for this evening they'd like to share? Aside from Rothmer's very, very serious sailing update. There we go. Alright, gonna go into the silver now. Which again is Stormhost Silver. And focus this on the highest points of the gun. And then over emblems. Tips of the gun, tips of the barrel. Just to make it a little bit brighter. Not much brighter, just a little bit. But it adds just that right amount of dimensional shift. There we go. He has a little pistol in his holster here. So I'm just focusing some of that silver on to the underside of that handle. And then he also has a canister here as well. So I'm just going to pick that out. Before moving on to all of his spent shells. But like I said before, because this is a little machine gun, there is quite a few of these. There we go. Tiny bit of brown highlighting, which again is Blood Reaver flesh, just on his gun holster. Focusing it on the pocket and the edge. Moving on to the stones. Just so they aren't lost again. And there we are. That's the last of those rocks painted. Give it a moment to dry. Move back onto this base. For the rest of this week, it's going to be Sylvaneth, which are my wood elvy people. Literal trees now, but formerly the wood elves. Because I have quite a few I need to paint ready for my custom-made Warcry. After that I have some Nighthaunt to paint as well. So for the next few weeks at least, it's going to be quite Sigma, quite fantasy heavy. But on Saturday, Rothmer and I are going to try our best to get our hands on the latest Kill Team, Dead Silence. So if we are able to get our hands on that and lucky enough, then we will have some Space Wolves to paint, so more 40k stuff. Which if we are able to get our hands on that, we will prioritise that first. Just because it's more current and more recent, people will obviously be more interested in looking at that anyway. Like with yesterday's, I will be uploading a photo of these to the post section to show you the completed look, and then I'll post one of all 7 of them together so you can see the full set all fully highlighted and detailed. And once I've done that, then that will be this all finished. So there we have it. That's 4 figures today. All painted, all in various styles, all highlighted. So yeah, if you enjoyed these little detail ones where I just take figures that I've already completed, already done videos on, and just kind of expand on them more, then let me know. I'm more than happy to kind of pick some more out and do that. But anyway, I think that'll be it for today's video, you guys. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you everybody who tuned in today. Thank you very, very much. It's greatly appreciated. We do appreciate the support on the channel. We are still obviously working our way through the streams, getting used to streaming, but I do hope you've preferred this closer up camera angle. I've definitely preferred it personally. So for doing more detailed work like this, it's definitely way more convenient. So I wish you guys the best of luck this evening. I hope you all have a lovely evening, and I will see you guys tomorrow, hopefully. So have a lovely, wonderful night, everybody, and we will see you later. Bye for now.